Hey, how's it going, guys? In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to write JSON data into an Excel spreadsheet. I'll be using Win32com library to automate Excel spreadsheet in Python. And unfortunately, this library is only available on Windows. If you are using Mac OS or Linux, then you can use other libraries such as Excel SX Writer, so choose this library right here, or even Pandas library will work as well. Before we get started with this tutorial, we need some JSON data set first. I'm using this website, Json Generator, and the link is nextjson-generator.com. And I'll post the website's link in the description below. On the left-hand side is the metadata. On the right-hand side is the records generated via this tool. I'm going to copy this data set. I'm going to create a JSON file. Here I'm going to create an empty JSON data file. And let's name the file json.data.json. And let me open the JSON file. I'm going to paste the data set into this data.json file and save. And once we create the JSON file, we can open our Python editor and create a new blank Python script. I'm going to start by importing the libraries. I'll import the OS library, JSON library, and the Win32com library. So the actual module name is win32com.client. I'm going to name this as win32. And if you don't have this library installed, you can use the command pip install pywin32 to install the library. Alright, so for step number 1, we're going to read the JSON file. So let's name this 1.1. To read the JSON data file, we need to open the file first. Oops, should be data.json.read. And I'm going to take the JSON library .loads. I'm going to load the data. And I'll save the output as JSON data. Now let's print the JSON data object first. I'm going to highlight these lines and I'm going to execute them individually. Alright, so here's my JSON record set. And I'll move the panel to the right. And here let me change the print function to ppprint. Let's try again. And by quickly looking at this JSON data set, so here's our record number 1. We have ID field, about, address, balance, age, and a couple other fields. Here, let's go back to the JSON generator page. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So when you want to import JSON dataset into Excel, you need to flatten the data into a 2D layout first. And a lot of time when we work with JSON dataset, it's actually multi-dimension. It can be a 3D dimension layout, 4D, 5D, and so on. And unfortunately, Excel cannot read a table if it's more than 2D dimension. So let's figure out what information we want to import first. So this is going to be step 1.2, examining the data and flatten the records into a 2D layout. So I'll start by creating an empty list. I'll name the list rows. Next, I need to array the rows from the JSON data object. And if we print the JSON data object data type, it's actually a list. So let's print the first record first. It should be JSON data, first record. And here I'm going to insert my loop first. So I'm going to say that for record in JSON data, I need to determine what columns I want to import. So let's say I want to import the ID column. So from record object, I will provide the ID name. So this one's going to be ID. And I'll type a typo. So record is active. Let's import the email as well. And one more. Let's import the balance as well. Alright, so these 4 columns are the columns we can import directly since they are just a single dimension of value. If we look at other columns such as friends or names, it should be name, not names, or name column. The name column contains 2 properties, first name property and last name property. So we need to flatten the values first. So I want to grab the first name. So from record object, we need to reference the name key and first name. And we'll do the same for last name. Now let's take a look at other columns. I remember there was another column called tags. Let me do a search. Okay, right here. So there's a tags column, which is a list object. And we're going to concatenate every single item into a string. So tags. Here I'm going to reference the tags key first. And I can use the join method to join the records. As for the delimiter, let's use a comma. Alright, so let's do something a little more complex. Let's see, there was a friends column. Friends. Alright, so here we have a list object, and this list object contains a list of dictionaries, and the column name is friends. The good thing is, within each dictionary object, we have 2 items, ID and name. So I'll name this as friends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a list comprehension. I'm going to say that for friend in friends. And this will be on the record, followed by the friends key. We know this friend object is going to return us a dictionary. So what I can do is I can insert a string. I can insert 2 parameter placeholder. So this will be placeholder number 1, and this will be placeholder number 2. That format. Then we can grab the ID and the name from the friends dictionary. Now we need to insert a couple more information in the string. So in the string, I'll include ID and name. I'll insert a comma in between these 2 values. And this is going to be the value that we're going to insert into an Excel spreadsheet. So these are all the columns value I want to insert onto an Excel spreadsheet. So now I can take the rows object and I can append all the values in a list object. And we can switch the sequence based on your reporting. I'm going to insert the ID column first. It's active. Email address. Actually, I don't have address. Email balance. And here I have an extra comma. First name, last name, tags, friends. Now let me run this code block first. Oops, the ID key is incorrect. So this should be underscore ID. Let me try again. is active. Now if I use the len function to give me the record count, and I have 22 records, and that's not right. Here, let me try again. So I'm going to rerun this code block. Okay, now I have 9. 9 is the correct record count. Now if I print the rows object, and let me just check something. So here I see a list, and we should have 2 closing brackets. Okay, I see. So here I made a mistake. So we should join all the values together. I'm going to insert the join method, and I'll separate them by using a semicolon. Now let me run the code block again. Okay, so this time the string looks correct to me. So here we have an extra space, and we can fix that using the stripe function. And I'll insert an extra space right after the colon. Alright, so we can move on to the next task, which is inserting records to an Excel spreadsheet. So this will be step number 2, inserting records to an Excel spreadsheet. So if you're writing any program using VBA, then the syntax using PyWin32 or Win32com library is very similar to VBA, except that we're writing VBA in Python. So we need to start by creating an Excel application instance. And we can do that by inserting the Win32 library .dispatch. And we need to provide the application name. So unfortunately, when you use Win32com library for any sort of automation work, the error message is not very helpful. Unless you have working with a Windows system using C# or other languages before, then it's going to be very difficult to troubleshoot. And for me, I've written VBA for about 5 to 6 years until I transitioned to Python. I actually know how to debug the error pretty well. And that's why I love using Win32 to automate any sort of Microsoft Office work. So here let's set the Excel application visibility to true. Next, we need to create a new Excel workbook. So we'll take the Excel app object, .workbooks, and it should be workbooks.add. And this is a method. And we're going to save the output as WB. And once we have the Excel workbook created, we can reference the first Excel worksheet by referencing the workbook object .worksheets. And we can assign the worksheet index number. And since we want to reference to the first tab, it's going to be 1. Now let's run each line individually. So I'll run line 31 first. So this will create a new instance of Excel application. And to display the Excel application, we need to set the visibility to true. Now let's create the Excel workbook. So we'll run line 34. And I'll create a new Excel workbook. Let me do this. I'm going to put these 2 items side by side. And I'll move the panel to the bottom. Now we need to reference this sheet 1 tab. So we'll run line 35. And if I print ws.name, and that gives me the worksheet name, sheet 1. Right, so we have the workbook and the worksheet objects created. We need to insert the headers. So here, let me grab the these, I don't know how many lines here. I'm just going to put, I'm just going to copy paste right here. I'll create an array object. I'll name this object header labels. I'll use tuple to store the column names. So we have ID is active, email, balance, first name, last name, tags, and friends. I want to insert the column headers to row number 1. So I'm going to iterate each value. I'll insert the enumerate function first. So enumerate. I'll pass the header labels object, and this will return the index and the value. So we have the index and the value. And because we're working with an Excel spreadsheet, so the index actually starts from 1. You can use the sales method and to locate the cell reference. And 1 is going to be row number 1. And the second parameter is the column index. So row and column. For the column index, we need to increase the index value by 1. Dot value. And the V should be uppercase. Then we can insert the label name. So I'm going to run this loop. You can take a look. Oops. Header labels is not defined. Oh, I forgot to create the header labels object. Now let me run this loop again. And I'll insert the column headers. Let me zoom in. Okay. Here, let me zoom in a little bit. So this is going to be insert headers. Now I want to insert records. Let's do insert header labels. And this one will be insert records. To insert all the rows from the JSON data object, here I'm going to create a row tracker variable. I'm going to start from row number 2. I also need to grab the column size. Now we need to iterate each row from the rows object. So in Excel, when we want to insert a value onto an Excel spreadsheet, we can use 2 methods. One is the range method, the other one is the sales method. And because I want to make the insertion dynamic, meaning that it doesn't matter how many rows or columns I have, I want the script to be able to work regardlessly. So I want to insert the range method first. Oops. And here I want to set my dimension size. So we're going to iterate each row. So the only dimension size we need to specify is the column dimension. So here I'll insert the sales method. I'll insert the row tracker variable. And my record insertion always starts from the first column, comma. Now I want to specify where the column is going to end. And it's going to end based on the column size. Dot value. Then we can insert the row object, and this is a list. And the row object is a single dimension list. Then we need to increase the row tracker value by 1. Now let's run this code block. And here I'm an error. It's an attribute error, sales. So that's what I'm saying, that when you see the error message from Win32 library, it's usually not very helpful. But here I noticed that I have a typo. Here, let me try again. Okay, so the records got inserted to my Excel spreadsheet. And let's take a look at the table. So here's my ID column. It's active, email, balance, first name, last name, tags, and friends. Alright, so once we insert all the records to an Excel spreadsheet, we need to save the file. So we'll take the workbook object, save as, and we need to provide the file path. So it's the path join method. And I'll save the file in my working directory. For the file name, I'll just name the file JSON output.xlsx. And there's one more parameter we need to specify, which is the file format. So if you do a search on Excel file format enumeration, and I'll post the link in the description below as well. So here we need to search for the file extension that we want to save as. And this way we can specify the file type. If we want to save the file as a CSV file, then you can use the enumeration value 6. And since I want to save the file as regular Excel file, so I'll search for the extension name XLSX. And here we have a couple results. It should be this one right here. I'm looking for the default, and it's going to be 51. So for the second parameter, I'm going to insert the format value 51. Now I can close the file and close the Excel application. And to make sure that the Excel application is not running in the system, so I'll set the object value to none. And that's it. Alright, so let's do one more test run. So I'm going to kill all the Excel application instances. Alright, so let's see. Let me go back to my folder. I'm going to terminate this session, and I'll press F5 to run the script. So here I have a type error, and notice that the file got created. Here, let me open the Excel file. And I see the file got generated. So the issue here is when I close the Excel file. So okay, let me go back. So here, this should be uppercase C, so close. And let me delete the Excel output file. So every time when you work with Win32 count, for some reason the method name always starts with uppercase. Let me try again. Okay, so this time everything worked just fine. Now let me open the Excel file again. And here we have our JSON dataset in Excel file. Alright, so this is everything I want to share in this video. And hopefully you guys found the video useful. And as always, thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys on the next video.